Okay, hey, welcome back. We are cruising right along. Good job. All right, so now we're going to talk about objectives. Some people think that I get fixated on objectives, but that's because I lead a purpose driven life. And so it's not enough to show up and just spout off some information and then go home. Like, you actually have to be trying to achieve something because your objectives are kind of what we evaluate you on, right? Like, we think, oh, this kid was trying to do these things. And then based on what he was trying to do, did he succeed or fail, right? And so it's not just for us to evaluate you, but it's also for you to evaluate yourself. So like you had, specific objectives. Did you achieve them, right? And so these are the things that people struggle with. And I worked in extension for 7 years, and we had to write objectives in reports of accomplishment and plans of work and, plans for things. And just in general, like the concept of writing objectives, is a thing that people struggle with. And I don't really understand why, but hopefully this will make more sense to you. So they are statements of intended learning outcomes, right? So what is the audience going to be able to do? Again, not what you're going to do, but what the audience should be able to do as a result of your talk. It helps sequence the instruction, right? So we think about so broadly, if you think about a goal, and you come in and you get, let's say you want to teach people how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, right? A good objective would not be to teach people how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, right? Because that's really dumb. So better objectives would be more granular, right? So we would say something like, audience will be able to list the ingredients of a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Audience will be able to describe the 4 steps to assembling a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And finally, audience will demonstrate that they are capable of making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Okay, and that's a dumb example, but you can see how it's better than our objective is to teach them how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, right? Because there's a lot that can go wrong in there. And that's like taking a class pass fail, okay? You either did it or you didn't. And whenever you break it down a little bit into maybe 3 objectives, then you can say, all right, they were able to list the parts and maybe the steps, but they just didn't really get there in terms of putting it together. And so you see how that becomes more useful and manageable. Now, there's a thing such as having too many objectives. You only got a 12-minute talk here, so you can't have 17 objectives because you'll, never make those. But so the verbs and the objectives are important because they specify what it is that you're hoping to do. Sometimes people write sentences without verbs, and I don't understand how that's a thing, but they do. And then it also completely communicates what should be learned in the end, right? And so, which is, again, a bit redundant. But whenever you go into your talk, and this is a thing that I feel like is a best practice for any kind of talk, whether it's a lecture in school or a training demo, is you say to the audience, here are the things that you're going to get out of this presentation. By the end, you are going to know, the parts of a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, the steps, and how to do it. And then they're like, oh, now I know where we're going. And so that helps them sort of conceptualize the information that you're giving them. You give them the roadmap, and then they fill in the pieces. It's also finally, like I mentioned before, an evaluative tool. So you say, I'm going to hopefully accomplish these 3 things. And then at the end, you can go back and say, did I or did I not? Or to what degree did I achieve them? Okay. So in this training demo, again, because the idea is to be for the audience to be able to do the thing that you're teaching them how to do, this is a helpful hint. Your last objective, regardless of how many you have, should always be that the audience will demonstrate their ability to do whatever the thing is that you're teaching them. If you don't have that, you're doing a bad job. So cool. So some no verbs, things that are kind of vague and tough to do is learn, know, understand. Sometimes they're appropriate, but just these are the ones that people reach for first. And I would like to encourage you to reach a little further or harder or whatever you want to say. So here's some better ones. So the audience will be able to describe the benefits of ethanol. All right, that's okay, right? Explain the benefits of adding soy to your diet. Demonstrate the techniques for performing CPR, right? Because you don't want to just tell them how and then hope that it worked and then send them off into the world. And then maybe they want to summarize the history of block and bridle, okay? So these are all better words. I think that I'm actually going to put up someplace a list of good objective verbs. So that'll be in the assignment probably. So, okay, so you don't have to do this now, but just know that your comprehension check for this unit will be this like little activity. So just imagine that you have to go back to your high school and give a presentation to a group of juniors on like what college is like, and that is broadly defined. You can take that to mean what you want. So like, what objectives would you use? So just kind of a good way for you to think through, and then your TA will give you some feedback. Okay. So for your plan, again, this thing, you need a minimum of 2 full pages of descriptive content, not counting the place before prepare, which is this stuff. Okay. You want to remember that if you want it graded, you need to type it. You can use bullets. Please follow the template. Don't make up your own. Sometimes people do that and they fail. And then I'm going to put up good examples on Canvas of like videos and plans and whatnot. So cool. All right. So let's talk about the body content. Remember that bear method? Okay. Just remember that that's a thing. And that was like to choose how to put in and what to put out. So again, this is pretty straightforward, right? Oh man, I totally, sorry. It's like I made a section header for a section that isn't there. So your body content kind of writes itself, I think is all I wanted to say here. So if you decide like what your topic is and you come up with the 5 or 6 steps to achieve that, like that's how you order your content right here, right? So steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, however many it takes, and then what you do in each step. Okay, all right, that was body content, cool. So the scoring rubric is broken down into 2 parts. This is how we're going to grade you, okay? And this is like where people like get disenchanted with their scores, right? Because they're thinking over here, they're thinking in the product sort of field. So they're like, oh, I had a great physical presence. I had good like voice power, and I, blah, blah, blah. Like I was very funny and people laughed and they were really into it. And couldn't you tell, Adam? But it also includes this other part. Okay. And maybe a better way to do this is just to show you the actual, bear with me, the actual score sheet. Okay. Let's make this enormous. Okay, so whenever we score you, it's out of 100, okay, all right? So we're looking at like 0 to 2, not addressed, 3 to 4, slightly better, 5 to 6, minimally, 7 to 8, all right, we're doing good, 9 to 10, great job, okay? And so we basically follow along, right? So we start out, all right, did the opening prepare the audience, like for what we're shooting for? Did they talk about what the purpose of the talk was, how it was important to the audience, like why there's a need for it? Did it create some interest, or did we just kind of left like, meh, I don't know if I want to learn this or not now? Did we go over like briefly an overview of the procedures, and did we briefly establish credibility, which again can be subtle, like talking about your background and stuff. And so then we score it and we write you some comments. And then the content, right? So did we show and do? Did we explain the steps in a safe manner? Did we present it in a logical order that seemed to demonstrate that you put some thought into how like the best way to organize it was? Did we communicate how to perform each step? Did we provide an opportunity to practice the skill? This is a thing that people will forget to do sometime, okay? Cool. So that's it, right? And then review, like at the end, did you summarize key points? Did the audience feel that they could perform the task, right? And so sometimes people they don't do a review. They just get to the end and they're like, all right, good job, everyone. Thanks for coming out, and they don't review this. And then they're like, why did I lose 10 points? And I'm like, well, it's right there. Like you have to do it or you don't get the points, okay? And so so that was sort of process, like these are the things. And then this other part is what we call product, right? So these are the things that you made and like your sort of expression of it. And so were your visual aids good? Like, were they appropriate for the situation? Did you have the right props? Did you have the right kind of handout? Was your, PowerPoint professional looking? But also voice and physical presence, right? So were you articulate? Did you, not speak in a monotone? Did you go too fast, or do you need to, speed up a little bit, et cetera, et cetera? I will tell you, just as an aside, I'm just making up words now, aside, like, especially for those of you who come from like the FFA world, like you're maybe used to people counting the number of times you say or and then like deducting points accordingly. Like, just know that that's a dumb thing, okay? Because like ums and uhs are natural parts of speech for us, right? And so if I tell you to get up there and give your talk, and you know that I'm counting about ums and uhs, that's the thing you're going to focus on. My philosophy is that I want you to get all of this right first, right? Like, how do I organize content in an organized way? How do I do professional looking, visuals? How do I do like all this other stuff before we get down to like, did I count us and which I'm never actually going to count. But so know that this is part of it, but it's not like, don't fixate on that, because I say and all the time, and you probably haven't noticed because everybody does it, okay? All right, I'm done with that now. Okay, so did you make eye contact with the audience, or did you stare at your props the whole time? Did you demonstrate enthusiasm, or did it look like you'd rather be anywhere else in the world? Was your professional appearance like a real thing, okay? And so here's a caveat for this, okay? So for most of your talks, professional appearance is like business casual, okay? Don't expect you to wear a suit, but we do expect you to wear leather shoes, something equivalent of like a button up and khakis, maybe a polo, but probably not because it'll be cold. Anyhow, but for your training demo, we say professional dress is professional for the context of the speech, okay? So we've had some people come in and talk about like quarantining hogs for stuff, and so they'll wear like the white puff suit with like the mask and gloves and stuff, and so that's what you would wear in that situation, and so that's appropriate. So if you are like going to bring in microscopes and do lab stuff, like maybe professional dress is your lab coat and goggles. And so ask your TA if you're concerned, and then if your talk is just sort of general, then just know that like professional appearance is what we expect. And then finally, did you follow the steps and procedures? Were you within the time limit? And there's a certain amount of points that we take off if you go over, and we'll give you the hook if you take too long. Okay, cool, great. So we're moving right along. So I think we're getting down to the end here. Your training demo plan is due, maybe not this week because it's an old PowerPoint, but is due a week before the presentation cycle starts. So I believe that is week 3. So just know whatever it says it is on Canvas. Things to keep in mind, and we've kind of touched on this, is how much time you have and how much information can you cover, right? So don't try to be epic. Don't be like, we're going to train you how to like fend off bears and start a fire and like boil water and all these things. Like pick something that is feasible in the time. We want to think about safety. Please don't injure anybody. Is it something that we can like feasibly do? Is that, as I mentioned before, the toughest part of the training demo is to come up with a topic. So don't delay in doing that. And is it applicable to your theme? Like, does it fall within the broad range of your theme? Okay. Other tips, I already talked about this professionally. Address the audience, not your props, and then give everyone a chance to try it. These are things that people do wrong all the time, and you can avoid and get much more points. So hopefully this makes sense. Your training demo, again, is like probably one of the ones that you'll use the most. And then just to review, today we talked about the components. We talked about how to construct objectives, and then we're going to, blah, blah, blah. So you can read the things. So go do the comprehension check. Get to work on all the other things, and I look forward to seeing you in lab, possibly. Thanks.